Hello and welcome to Deprogrammed with Keri Smith. If you are watching this, it's Thursday night, which is our interview night. I'm very excited about my guest tonight. Her name is Megan Leigh. She is the host of the Noob Reviews, that's Noob Reviews channel on YouTube. She's also a member of the Geeks and Gamers team. She told me she is known as the resident noob and normie at the Geeks and Gamers team, which is a cool title. I'm really blessed because I got to meet this lady in person and hang out with her a couple times, even go antiquing with her. She lives in the great state of Texas. Please welcome Megan to the stream. Hello, Megan.
Hi.
Hi. I said that last part with a touch of bittersweetness because I just learned you're moving soon.
Yes. No, that makes me sad too. And I've missed church like the last couple of weekends, which is where I was seeing you most often.
Yep.
But it's just like when you work like 40 hours a week, you only get hours, like weekends to like pack. So anyways, bummer.
Pack up and your whole place looks, you can tell you're moving.
It's so bare. And it feels really echoey. I don't know how bad
that sounds nice though to me. So, well, welcome. We're gonna have to hang out again before you leave because I thought I had all the time in the world. So we'll make that happen. So you, for anyone who's not familiar with your channel, can you just tell people a little bit first before we get into your background, or maybe it involves your background? What do you do at the Noob Reviews?
So it does involve my background because like the title is, I'm a noob. So growing up, I was raised in a pretty strict Baptist family, and we didn't have a TV, and we didn't go to movies, and we lived very, very simply. I guess
you were homeschooled?
I was homeschooled, yes. So in some ways, it was a sheltered life. But I wasn't like super sheltered or isolated. It was just, we were more sheltered from parts of the world, if that makes sense, especially because if you don't watch TV, you're not seeing commercials of toys, and I was like more or less unaware of all the popular TV shows and movies and of the time period, like when I was a kid in the 90s. So
did you have a Cabbage Patch Kid?
Huh?
Did you not have a Cabbage Patch Kid?
Nope. I had friends that were in public school, and so they had like all the in toys, right? They had Cabbage Patch Kids and My Little Pony and all that stuff. But we never had that. No.
Were you raised in a big family?
Yeah, so I am the second oldest of 4. Okay. So I have an older brother and I have a younger sister and younger brother. And so I just knew nothing. And when I went to public school for grades like 11 and 12, because my mom, by high school, she was like, I'm done with you kids. Like, get out. Like, I'm done. So I was just like, I have nothing in common. I have no idea what they're talking about. I don't know what this is. Like, so I would just be very quiet. But then when COVID hit, I was kind of bored, and I was spending a lot more time on YouTube, and I came across you, and I came across Geeks and Gamers, and I came across Nerdrotic, and I was watching all these people like I guess the algorithm sent me you guys because there is political commentary within all of you. But the pop culture stuff really grabbed me because that was stuff I was familiar with just from hearing it. Mm-hmm. But I'd never lived it. And I was also going, man, this is so cool. These people have a channel, and I want a YouTube channel. What would I talk about? I know nothing. Like, and then I went, oh, that's it. Like, I'll just explore pop culture, and maybe people want to come along for the journey. Maybe not, whatever. I'm going to have fun.
With a fresh perspective.
Yeah.
Along with you. Sort of like how there are some channels like Force of Light. I know they do movie reviews of films they've never seen, like classic movies that a lot of people have seen. And then there's those channels that are really popular, the ones where it's like young people listening to music that they like classic songs that they've never heard before.
Yes.
And you get to go for the ride with them. So that's sort of the experience of your channel.
Mm-hmm. No, it is. And it's really funny because lately I've been getting into gaming just because right now with moving, it's so much easier to just sit down and do a live stream than it is to actually like record a video and edit it and, and all of that. So I've been doing some gaming live streams, and gaming is super new to me as well. And I always tell people, okay, like no spoilers. Fuck, feel free to drop hints because I don't know what's happening. People love that. Like I've learned that people, whatever they're really, really passionate about, whatever they love, they really enjoy sharing it with you. You know,
Yes.
especially if you are, you know, genuinely interested.
Yeah.
So I was actually really afraid to start this channel because I was like, I don't know anything and people are gonna make fun of me. And like, so wrong. People are so excited to be like, oh, you should check this out. Oh, I really love this. You should look at this too. This was a great movie. This was a great show. Yeah. So people are just really excited to, like, they're excited for me.
Mm-hmm.
And I get a lot, oh, I'm so jealous. You get to experience this for the first time, like new. I'm so jealous. I'm like, oh.
So what are some of those classics that haven't been, because a lot of the channels you mentioned, Geeks and Gamers, Friday Night Tights, like erotic and stuff, a lot of people are talking about how ideology has seeped into pop culture and in some people's opinion ruined a lot of it. What are some classics that you've been able to enjoy that haven't been touched by any?
So for me, it's been mostly comic books because that's where I started. I started with comic books because growing up, not having a TV, we played outside or we read books. Like we were big readers, big into reading. And so I thought that's what I first started with. The very first thing I started with was, I don't know anything about comic books, but I've always been interested. So, and I like to read. So it was like a good crossover, a good starting place for me. And so that's where I started, in comic books. And it was immediately apparent because I found myself more drawn to the comic books from like the 60s, 70s, 80s, a little bit in the 90s. But once you hit the 2000s, I didn't like it. And I was
no.
like, why don't I like this? The art is different. They're not making as much effort when it comes to the artwork. The dialogue is very shallow. It's really poorly written dialogue. The storylines tend to be weak. And then more and more as you go along, you notice that different ideology too. They're pushing like, oh, there's like Robin Hood is gay and, you know, all of this stuff. And you're like, no, he's not. Like, he wasn't. What?
You're like, I was just reading the 1960s Batman.
Yes.
And Robin.
Yes. So yeah, it was very apparent to me early on when it came to comic books. And then as I started watching movies like Avengers and all of that, and you're like, whoa, okay. It kind of hits you. Yeah.
So what about in the gaming area? What are some of the games that you're playing or that you enjoy?
Okay, so I just started. So I've been playing Zelda. I was playing Zelda. Breath of the Wild was the first one I played. And then the newest one is Tears of the Kingdom. And those are through Nintendo. I don't see any type of ideology in there at all. They're just such fun, open worlds, just lose yourself in them games. And then I've played a little bit of Super Mario Smash Brothers and what was something else? Oh yeah, Luigi's Haunted Mansion.
So do you go back, because you mentioned with, Noob reviews, it's a fresh perspective. You missed a lot of this pop culture growing up. So with comic books, like you've gone back and started with older comics, decades previous. Do you feel a need to do that with games? Do you have an old system? Do you ever play any old games?
I haven't played any old games. Like all I have is a Switch.
Okay.
So everything with the Switch is a newer console. And so there's a lot of newer games. Now people have told me, Megan, you should try the older Zelda games and you need to get technology wise when it comes to gaming. I have no idea what I'm doing. So I'm going to have to recruit someone, be like, set me up, because I really want to play these older games, the older Mario and the older Zelda, where it's like really more pixelated. And But yes, I'm afraid too, because the rumors I've heard are that older games are actually a lot more difficult, and they have made them a lot easier for people to play and to beat. They're trying to be more like inclusive, I guess, which I think is weird, because even if you can put a game on easy mode or hard mode or whatever, but when I watch YouTube videos of like actual gamers, you'll hear them complain. Even hard mode is not that challenging or whatever. So
compared to what it used to be.
compared to what it used to be, yeah.
So on Geeks and Gamers, tell us about what you do for their channel, because you're the resident noob.
So I work on the anime channel, which is the newest channel that we Geeks and Gamers has, and that was super random, because I mean, there's no reason why I should be on Geeks and Gamers, because I really don't know anything. Everybody else there like really knows what they're doing, and they have editing experience and whatever. But I was actually recruited by Ivan, because I play piano.
Yeah,
so I was recruited by Ivan to be part of a cover band to do anime theme song covers just randomly once in a while.
Okay.
And he actually contacted me, and I was like, I know who this guy is. Like, why is he? Okay, this is interesting. And he says, would you be interested in doing this? And I said, yeah, totally. He's like, it'll just be random times, and I'll let you know. So he gave me a song, and he wanted to see what I could do with it. He's like, I'll give you 2 weeks, and then record it and send me what you got. So we were just talking back and forth, and he would give me critique from what I had done so far, and he really liked what I had done. And then we just kind of put that on the back burner, and he said, well, you're a musician. It'd be really, really cool if you were just recorded with me a couple videos just reacting to different opening theme songs to different anime shows. He's like, I'd really love to get your perspective, because you don't know anything about anime, but you are a musician, so this will be a cool perspective. And I said, okay, let's do it. So we did a few of those, and then he's like, well, why don't you come on a live stream? Well, why don't you come on another live stream? Well, let's record another video. And then he goes, do you want us to be part of the team? And I said, okay, like, sure. So it was super, super random. And what I do is I am the person that they love to see reactions to. And the whole chat is like, oh, show Megan this. Oh, make Megan watch this. Have Megan do a reaction to this, because I've seen nothing. And people love to see reactions to people's reactions to something they know, but that person doesn't know.
It's like taking a child to Disneyland when you've already been, but you get to re-experience it through the fresh eyes. So, well, that's really cool. Let me ask you some questions about because I'm curious about, you mentioned a little bit about your background and how you came to start the channel, being why you're a newbie to a lot of pop culture. And you said you grew up homeschooled and you didn't have a television and somewhat sheltered from culture. So do you regret anything about that? And I ask because now we're at a point where my background, I used to be super bigoted, I would say, prejudiced against homeschoolers, against Christians, against a lot of people. And, a lot has changed both in the world and with me and in the past 10 years or so. And a lot of people I know are now saying, in this culture with what's happening in the public school system, you should homeschool your kids.
Yes.
And so I just want to get your perspective. I know it was a different time when you were homeschooled, but do you have any regrets?
No, absolutely not. Like, as a kid, you sometimes feel like you're missing out, obviously, oh, I don't have the toys all these kids have, and I don't know what they're talking about. But even those moments as a kid were very rare, because I had such a great childhood and I had so much fun. Like, we had friends with acreages, and I grew up, like, we lived in town, but I had the best of both worlds, because we would spend the whole day on our friend's farm, and the adults would be in the house and like, there's 40 acres, go out and play, like, leave us alone. And we just ran wild. And if our parents knew what we were doing, like, yikes, but we didn't tell them, and we had a great time. We didn't die, so it's fine. But I had a great childhood. Like, it was like very adventurous. And it's funny because I grew up in the 90s, but I feel like my childhood is comparable to a kid that grew up in the 70s or 80s,
Yep.
where you had a lot more freedom and your parents were like, just go outside. If you're thirsty, drink from the hose. Like, because that's what we did. And it's kind of funny that I had that upbringing, and I didn't mind it then. I had, like, sometimes you have just jealousies as a kid, but even then, especially being sent to high school, let me tell you, having been homeschooled and having that flexibility to like do my schoolwork at my own pace and have that understanding of I do this subject, get it done, and I'm done my school by like 1 or 2 p.m. And the rest of the day is mine. My mom's like, do your chores, do your school, go play. Like, if you use your time wisely, you're going to have more time to play, you know?
Yeah.
And as a kid, that's what's important to you. So, like,
So you were
sending
learning
us to
time
high
management.
school. Yes, sending us to high school is probably actually really good for us. And I don't think my mom realized how good for us it was. It was more just the ease of getting us graduated and letting us get our diploma, because you had to jump through a few more hoops as homeschoolers to get your high school diploma. But if she put us into high school, then we didn't have to jump through a bunch of hoops.
It was easier. Okay.
Yeah, it was easier. And honestly, that just, I think for all of us kids, that helped us really appreciate what we had, because we were like, man, it felt like jail. It felt like going to jail. I'm not going to lie.
It helped you appreciate, it gave you perspective about how you had been raised.
For sure.
Did you notice any differences in, I would say, like, in yourself and the kids who were always in the public school system?
Oh, yeah. No, the interesting thing about the public school system is kids that are in public school system are always with somebody their age, all the way up. It's their same age group. And you're all in the same space in your brain development and everything. You're just like going up. And as a homeschooler, we would do things as homeschoolers. And we were never divided by age groups. And so you are hanging out with the little kids and the bigger kids and people of all ages. And my mom kept us pretty balanced, and she would, once in a while, we would go to the old folks' home and we play bingo with them. And she had friends that were public school teachers, so we went to the public school and we did gym and we did whatever music program. So we were with kids our own age and we were with kids of other ages. And what I noticed was my biggest difficulty was with my own peers, but everybody else I got along with, super easy. Their biggest difficulty was anybody outside of their peer group.
Oh, that's so interesting. You know, I've been thinking about that with homeschoolers recently, just about having the benefits of having kids of different ages in a classroom. Because I was raised in the public school system and just thought it was normal that you should separate everyone out.
I think in some way, because I mean, what I saw as some homeschool families that were even like very strict, very sheltered, and they'd have like 7 kids or something. And the older kids would end up parenting some of the younger kids, and you could see the resentment over time. And looking back, I'm like, those kids weren't always able to be kids because they were helping parent. So I don't think that's, like, obviously you should help with your siblings and all of that, but I still think
there's a difference between helping and becoming the parent.
Yes, exactly. So I think there just needs to be more of like a balance.
Yeah.
To be honest, like with anything.
If you become a mother, do you think you would homeschool?
Oh yeah, like absolutely, 100%. And then if, like, for whatever reason, if I had to put them in, like, I couldn't homeschool them, I would be looking for some sort of private school or like Christian school or something, you know, that's, you have a little bit, I don't know, more awareness of what's going on
in the world.
Yeah.
What do you think? What are some benefits that you had? You mentioned, being around different age groups is something that you were very used to, but what are some other benefits you think you may have gotten from being homeschooled, from not being in the public system and trying to
Definitely those time management skills for sure. And then also when you have a lot more time, like everybody's like, well, you missed out on all the extracurricular activities. No, I didn't. My mom put us in music lessons. And the thing is, like, we would have our piano lesson. We could do it in the morning and then we do school. I had much more time to practice than other kids because I didn't have homework because I got all my work done,
Mhm.
and I didn't have a teacher being like, well, this didn't get done in class, so you have to do this afterwards. So I actually had a lot of time for different extracurricular activities, and I got to immerse myself in them more deeply. And I started piano at the age of 11 when everybody else had started at like so people put their kids into these things like really early, like 4 or 5,
Yeah.
right? So when I was in grade 1 piano, I was with when I was 11, and all the other kids in grade 1 piano were like 7 years old. And I was like, so that gave me a little bit of, well, I don't want to be with the 7-year-olds. And I had the time because I wasn't in school or busy with homework. I did 2 grades of piano a year. And by the time I was in high school, I was with my own peers at my piano level. And I mean, a lot of kids in public school, they couldn't do that because their music lessons are in school in a music class where you're kind of kept back to keep everybody in the class on the same level. Or if they were taking private lessons, they didn't have the time I had.
Yeah.
That,
Flexibility.
yeah.
When did you first did your parents restrict devices? When did you first get a device?
I remember my mom would drop us off at the movie theater at our mall and give us a quarter and we use the payphone. And she'd be like, call me when your movie's done, I'll pick you up. We had a family cell phone. So we had a landline and we had a family cell phone. And then over time, as payphones became basically extinct, she'd be like, here's the cell phone, call me. And that was a shared cell phone. I did not get my own cell phone until I was about to leave for college.
Wow, and you're quite a bit younger than me, and that was my experience. Like you said, in some ways your experience is a little bit more like Gen X or something because, that was my first cell phone, was going to college, and it was
Did you pay for
way before.
minutes or like, because I had to pay for minutes. I didn't have a plan. I paid for minutes.
Yeah, I think we did, and actually, I don't think we paid for anything because it was for emergencies only, so I never used it.
I barely used mine as well. I don't think I really started texting on it until my second year of college.
Yeah, this one didn't even have. I'm talking, it was one of those, like in that old Will Ferrell sketch from SNL where he's got the big phone and he pulls out the antenna. It was like that kind of
Oh,
like,
wow. I
it
had
was
like the
large.
little flip phone.
Technology had advanced a bit by the time you got your college phone.
Yeah.
This one was like, keep this in your glove compartment in case you ever are stranded on the side of the road and it's an emergency, and then you can use it. Okay, that's what it was for.
Oh, that's so funny.
Yeah. So do you feel like, because I want to go over some of the criticisms I hear or worries that I hear people say about homeschooling, one of which is, well, if you restrict devices, your child doesn't know how to use the internet or use computers or phones or anything, and they have a real learning curve when they become young adults and catching up with technology. Do you find that to be true?
For me, then, no.
Mm-hmm.
We had a computer. We had to ask permission to use it. It was like the family computer. So my mom used it for emails. And for the longest time, I thought it was just for emails. I'm not going to lie. I thought computers were just send emails and like you could play solitaire. Like, like it just, yeah. No, I didn't really use, I think I got Facebook my last year of high school. And that was like a big deal. And my parents, I went and got Facebook without my parents' permission. They found out and I was kind of in trouble. And So I got this whole talk about, safety and blah, 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 whatever. And I didn't really use it, but sometimes we'd have like a free period in high school. So I would go on Facebook and just scroll around. But I mean,
But there hasn't been, I mean, you're
in that time period,
now.
like they kind of taught you how to use Google and search engines to do research if you're writing a paper. Like they were still at that time where they kind of were still teaching you how to do that.
Yeah.
I didn't feel like I was really missing anything. Maybe nowadays, because technology is like that much more part of our lives, maybe I would.
That's
but I
what
don't
we
know.
tend to think, but I have a suspicion it's pretty similar. I have a suspicion, because I know some kids, some parents whose kids live as if they're little adults in the interwebs, whose 4-year-old is like scroll, like knowing how to use
how well
it's
they
kinda
can use it,
scary.
and you're like, what are you doing? How do you?
Right. I
I
don't
work
think
with
they
kids.
need that. I think
Yeah.
they could learn that later. I don't think it's that
I don't think there's
hard.
anything you're missing out on, and especially because like I work with kids. I work with kids on the autism spectrum, and it's technology is very addictive.
Yeah.
And I found it's even that much more addictive for kids on the spectrum. They're even that much more addicted to it. And most actually autism clinics have a policy where we will wean the kids. Like they come in and they're addicted to their iPad, and the parents are like, here's their iPad. This is how we keep them quiet. They'll do anything for their iPad. And I'm like, okay, well, iPad's going to be staying home within the next few weeks. But
Wow.
okay.
Yeah, like
and
that.
we will wean them off of it. And to do that, we have to teach them. We have to make everything else more fun than the iPad. Being with us is more fun than the iPad. Playing toys with us is more fun than this toy is more fun than the iPad. And that is literally our therapy until the iPad is like, nope, stays with mom and dad.
Wow.
Mm-mm. And as soon as our kids are off that iPad, that is honestly just with kids with autism though, because that's like my really only experience.
Yeah.
It's like, it's easier to get them into the real world. Because that's the thing with kids with autism, they're kind of in their own world already, and technology makes it worse.
To isolate themselves.
Don't know as much for kids not on the spectrum, but
I assume it's similar pattern.
I would say probably.
Just more pronounced maybe with kids with autism. Do you have are you aware of the current numbers, the trend in children with autism who are also very more likely than kids without autism to say that they have gender dysphoria or they're transgender? Have you heard of these statistics?
Yes.
Do you feel comfortable talking about that? We don't have to.
We can talk about it. I don't know too much about it. We had one kid come in who insisted they were they, them, and they actually didn't stay long, but it was interesting.
Well, as someone who works with kids with autism, I have my suspicions about why you might see a higher percentage of autistic kids saying they're trans, but I don't work with kids with autism. So what do I know? You do. What are some opinions on why that might be that higher percentage?
So people in general just want to be accepted. And kids in general really want to be accepted. And a kid on the autism spectrum, like I said, it's a spectrum. So there are kids who are on the autism spectrum and they don't know they are autistic because they're mentally in a different place. They're not aware they're different, then they don't care. Mm-hmm. There are other kids who are higher functioning and they are aware that they're different. And they are aware that they're not getting it like everybody else is around them. And that awareness makes them that much more desperate to be accepted. Mm-hmm. And so that coupled with the current gender ideology, where even just kids in general see, oh, so-and-so has come out as gay or whatever, and the classroom throws a big party for them and they're getting lots of attention and they're special now. I want to be special. Yeah. There's that peer pressure that happens. And I think it happens even more so with somebody on the spectrum, somebody with a disability, somebody who is already different and knows they're different and is that much more desperate. for someone to accept them. And so I that is my theory, that this is why we are seeing kids on the spectrum be the ones that have gender dysphoria.
Who are learning about
Or
it.
they're learning it.
Me too.
Mhm.
Yeah. That's in line with kind of what my gut is about it. And that I believe they're more susceptible to it being introduced as an idea.
Mhm.
I don't believe it's an organic, if the idea has not been introduced, I don't believe organically we would see a higher percentage of autistic kids having discomfort in their body or saying, I believe I was born in the wrong body. I think the idea has to be introduced.
Yeah. Well, and especially the job I work in, we use it's called ABA therapy. So you use applied behavior analysis. And these kids are, especially kids on the spectrum, they're actually really easily manipulated. Like, it's not like that I don't manipulate them, that's not my job. But seeing them day after day, I can see how easy it would be for anybody to manipulate them and for them to fall into things.
I've read studies about this, that because autistic people have a harder time reading nonverbal cues, and they have a harder time being able to detect if a person is lying to them or conning them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. I see that every day with the kids I work with, no matter their age. And I work with kids that are like 2 to 14.
Well,
And it's, all the same. Being able to judge, like, we work a lot on talking about, is this person safe? Would this person be safe? There's just a lot of discussion. There's a lot of talk about what people in the world are trustworthy. And that's a big part of their therapy every day.
mm-hmm.
Because we know they are so easily influenced.
How did you get into this kind of work?
I fell into it.
Like geeks and gamers.
This is my life, right? I'm like, I'm going to be a great pianist and I'm going to play with orchestras. And all of a sudden I work with kids on the spectrum and I have a YouTube channel. I don't know how this happened.
Same. Girl, I was in Tanzania studying primates. I thought I was going to be working with
No
apes the rest of
way.
my life. Yeah.
You're going to be like
And
Jane
now I'm like,
Goodall.
right. And then I was working in comedy. That was kind of just
That's crazy.
you never know where things
That
are
is
gonna
quite
take
a
you.
jump.
Yeah. And now this. So it's life is full of surprises.
I was looking for a job and I came across a nannying job and they said their kid was on the spectrum. And so I actually, growing up, my mom, like, she stayed home with us, but to bring in money, she babysat and she taught music lessons. She played flute, so she taught flute lessons. But then after a while, she started doing work as a respite care worker, which involves working in the foster system. So foster families that, like, say they need a break or they need support or like they have to leave for a family emergency, my mom would step in and help care for the foster kid. Well, the rest of the family had to leave or whatever, right? And a lot of these kids happen to be on the spectrum. So growing up, we had kids on the spectrum in our home. So when I came across this nannying job, I was like, oh, I have experience being around these kids. I was never part of their therapy or anything, but like I had experience being around them. So yeah, I applied for this nannying job and I was working with a kid on the spectrum, and therapists came into the home and they'd be like, well, when you're spending time with him throughout the day, try this or that. And it was just this natural progression. So yeah.
Wow. So do you have any, because as you mentioned at the very beginning of the interview, you've been to Church on the Square with me, the church I go to, a few times, and you mentioned if you had kids, you might, if you were going to put them in a school, you might look for a Christian school. Do you have any? Are you comfortable talking about like your faith or your belief in God? Okay. My journey of faith, people who watch Deprogrammed are familiar with this story, but I came to God late in life after a period of like 20 years rejecting God, what I thought Christianity was about, kind of going the path of making other things my God. What does your faith journey look like? Have you always, since you were raised in a Christian home, have you always had a belief? Have you ever had a period of doubt?
I definitely always had a belief, but doubt was also very constant, especially like high school,
Hmm.
college years. Even though I still had a lot of Christian and church influence, there was still a lot of doubt. And I kind of went through this really almost silly phase because, when you hear people's testimony was a big thing, right? And they always had this, like, it was just this big major event of their lives. And I would always sit there and be like, I've never had a major event. I never had this big turning point to God. And I kind of felt like dramatic that I would want, but I wanted that. Like I wanted some great big turn to God event, dramatic. I don't know. I was kind of a drama queen, so whatever. But it didn't feel like maybe this isn't real because I haven't had this experience
Right.
that other people have had.
I'm
Because I
glad you're
just grew
talking
up
about
in
this
this.
because I just got to interview Brahma Bull. Do you know him?
I've heard it. Yeah.
He's on Comics Division's channel a lot,
Yes.
yelling at parked cars. I interviewed him a few weeks ago, and he is a longtime believer. And so we were sort of talking around the same subject, like the difference between people who have never had, they didn't come to God late. They were raised
Mm-hmm.
in a Christian home. They were blessed to be raised in a Christian home, and they stayed with God. And so I'm glad you're talking about this. So that's a fear I haven't experienced because I haven't been on that hasn't been my path. So is there that fear of like, I didn't end up drunk in the gutter and like have that,
Have this like
right,
life-changing Paul on the road to Damascus kind of like
right.
light shining in your face, life-changing moment. Yeah.
Well, what about people who have that fear? What would you say to them?
Honestly, now I'd be like, I don't know what I'd say because I still struggle with that. But honestly, I think just at the most basic point, it's not important.
Mhm.
You don't have to have a big dramatic event in your life to be close to God or to feel close to God
I
because He's always there.
I would agree, and I would say as someone who did have that uh dark, period of and learning things the hard way, uh you can also be grateful that you didn't have to go through you didn't have to touch the burning stove, you
Mm-hmm.
know?
Mm-hmm.
There's pros and cons with both paths, I think.
Yes.
And
Yeah.
one of the cons is that one of the pros is that I feel like my faith is hard won and very considered. And,
Mm-hmm.
I had my whole period when I wasn't a believer. But one of the cons is that, I hurt myself a lot and hurt other people and um, just was lost
Mm-hmm.
and without God for so long and went through a lot of pain, I think, in learning things the hard way that was unnecessary. My pastor, who he said to me once, because he was an atheist for a long time, and
Mm-hmm.
he was like, it made me laugh because he was like, yeah, some people don't have to do this. like go through
Yeah.
they just they didn't have to
Yeah.
go through the school of hard knocks or,
Yeah.
touch the stove to see if it was really burning.
It's interesting. And I think most Christians I think that have been raised Christian like since birth, I
Mhm.
think they go through that same kind of doubt of am I Christian enough because I haven't had an experience, you know? I think that's our big doubt moment that we get to get to have because I think sometimes when you're raised in it, you take it for granted actually.
Mhm.
And it's it's like this habit and you're so used to it being there that you don't realize what a good thing it is or what a blessing it is or you don't have the same appreciation for it.
Right. Do
And
you
I think a
think
lot have a falling away, like it's usually not huge and dramatic, and then a coming back where they go, I had it really good.
yeah. Do you think that I do you think it's a good thing? I'm starting to think that maybe it's a good thing that or a good idea anyway, at least in intention, that the Amish and the Mennonites send their youth out. It's called Rumspringa,
Yes.
right? And they basically are like, go out into the world now
Mm-hmm.
and make a choice. Come back and
Yeah.
make a choice. You either become a part of the faith now, you make that choice, or you leave and go out into the world.
Mm-hmm.
Do you think that's kind of should there be some kind of ritual like that in Christianity for Christians who are like, you reach 17 or something, around about that time, okay, or 18, okay, or would there still be that pressure because you were raised in it? Would it still be? Do you think an 18-year-old wouldn't feel comfortable saying, okay, I choose option B? Like,
I think I think it sort of somewhat happens naturally, especially if you go to college or university. That's going to happen a little bit more naturally because unless you're going to a Christian college or university, you're going to be smacked in the face with everything that is not the culture you were raised in
yeah,
and is the exact opposite. Um, but I think what needs to happen is this sort of like a conversation almost with your parents, because I didn't have this conversation. I had to have it with myself of what does your faith mean to you
yeah,
and why? Like why do you believe this? Aside from this is how I was raised, why do you actually
right,
believe this? And nobody ever asked me that. And I think that would be a really great question
yes,
to ask when you're older, in that 16, 17, 18. Like, why are you here? Why do you go to church? Why do you do these things? Why do you
why
believe
is this
this?
meaningful to you aside
Yeah.
from being the way you were raised? I think that's
Mhm.
excellent. I think it would give people that assurance that they want, or that, this is hard one. Even though I was raised in this faith, this is hard. This is my choice.
Mhm.
Well, you know,
Yes. Because
God
I
chose
think
me
I
and
think
I am
we
choosing
need
God.
that to, instead of feeling like we've just fallen upon it,
Hmm.
like to make it more real, you need to. And the other thing was, I didn't know that it was okay to question and ask those questions because I had a lot of guilt for having those questions, to be honest, when I first had them,
Yeah,
because it felt like, why would you question this? You're a bad person then if you're questioning what you believe and why. And to have the reassurance that it's okay to question.
it's okay. And anyone listening who has kids, who's a believer, I hope that you welcome the questions. Like,
Hmm.
I think my faith can withstand questions. And so, yeah, I had a bad experience. So I was raised in the Southern Baptist Church,
Okay.
but quit. I wouldn't say my household was a very Christian home though.
Hmm.
And, you know, I lost my way um in my early teens. And I had an experience when I was younger. I had this very stereotypical view of Christians for a lot of reasons, but when I was young, I had a pivotal thing, Megan, where they in church, I remember asking, I was a little kid, and they were talking about how Jesus is the way, the truth, and the light, and no man shall come to the Father except through me.
Hmm.
And so this is why we need a missionary. So everybody hears the name Jesus, etc. So I was like, well, what if you're in another country and you worship God, but you have a different name for God and you don't know, you haven't heard the name Jesus, but what if it's the same God and you don't know? And I remember my Sunday school teacher was like, that's Satan putting that question in your head. And it's like,
Oh
Satan's in
no.
my head? Like, and as a little kid, like, don't
Oh.
do that to a kid, because like you're saying, you're basically teaching a kid the lesson that, any questions are evil,
Hmm. Hmm.
which they're not. like, I don't know.
I
The
never had that experience quite like that, but I did have adults, they would kind of like brush it off or try and distract you or redirect you, because I think a lot of people, especially that grew up in the church and then they teach Sunday school, I think a lot of people, they haven't either been faced with those questions or they don't want to face those questions, at least in my experience, because of any guilt attached to it
Mhm.
or any fear of I'm less a Christian or whatever.
Or they don't, yeah,
Or-
they maybe haven't ever sought answers to those things themselves,
Mhm.
I guess. Yeah.
Yeah. I remember growing up, maybe it was just like the church I was in, but like to ask a question felt, it was like you weren't allowed. Nobody told me straight up, but I just never felt like I was allowed.
Mhm.
So I
It's a
never
bit
really did.
like questioning woke in a public school.
Yeah, yeah.
Not allowed.
Not allowed. Don't question. Just say. Just do what I say.
So, where do you think things are going? I wanna get a noob's perspective, and a noob and a normie, as you call yourself. No, but with you have a very unique background and very interesting to me perspective. I completely get why you're on the Geeks and Gamers team. Um, I ask this question of a lot of people I talk to, just trying to get a handle on where we're at culturally, uh, in schools and in pop culture and politically, whatever. Whatever this question means to you, it's kind of open-ended. But where do you think things are headed?
I think things are heading to a very great divide.
Mm,
And it's very extreme. That there's going to be this side of extreme here, of that very woke gender ideology, everything that's being pushed on us. And then that extreme of the people that are against that going over here, but really far over there.
maybe far too far.
Maybe too far. And I feel like there's going to be this big divide, and then there's going to be a small group of people in the middle going, what the heck?
Are you going to be in the middle?
I think so. I hope so. I don't want to be. I know when you read the Bible, sometimes Jesus was pretty extreme, but he actually wasn't always.
Yeah.
He wasn't always, running through the temple and whipping people and turning over tables. Like he had moments where he was extreme, but for the most part, when I read, he wasn't super extreme. But I do, like, when you look at culture and everything, I'm like, I feel like there's going to be this really big divide where we've swung so far one way, people are panicking and going the other way.
Yes, that's what I worry about.
Balancing.
I worry about it's the Newton's third law, for every action, there's an equal and opposite reaction.
Yeah.
I think that could apply to people and culture and movements and stuff as well. We'll have to hold it down in the radical center. I think we'll be called
like the
extreme
center is going to be the radical, like, weirdos. Like, those are the weird ones in there.
Everyone hates us. Come be hated by both extremes. But what do you think happens after that? After the separation?
I think it's like anything like physics, the pendulum, it goes back and forth and back and forth, and it slows and it slows and it slows. And it's not probably going to stop right in the middle and be all perfect, because like life on this world is constantly like this. But like, maybe I hope that it slows and it's not so extreme back and forth.
You are a very joyful person. What brings you joy? How do you? Sometimes I like to ask this question because I have some people in my audience or the deprogrammed community who sometimes feel depressed or get down about the state of the world or things like. What keeps you going? Like, what brings you joy?
That's such a good question, because when I hit high school, I became very emo depressed, and then college, and I struggled with an eating disorder. And after that, when I got through those things, I was actually kind of a negative person for the longest time.
After that?
Yes. I was very angry and negative and bitter and kind of, definitely a victim. In my mind, anything that went wrong in my life that didn't work out that I wanted to do was somebody else's fault.
Yeah.
It didn't have anything to do with the fact that I didn't work hard enough, I didn't put in the effort or whatever. It was everybody else's fault. And it's only been like the past 4 or 5 years actually that I learned, and it was something I had to work on, because I had a couple of people tell me, like, Megan, you do have joy, but it's not there very often. It's actually very rare.
Oh,
and you're very negative. And
wow.
it's
I
like
didn't
you're
know this, Megan.
told this,
Huh?
like that, and the things that hurt the most are usually the things that are the most true,
Yeah.
especially when it comes to your own character and personality. And I remember hating being told that. And so I went away like really angry. And I've always been someone who keeps a journal. So I write a lot, which is how I kind of work through my thoughts because
Yep.
my brain
Same.
is like really crazy. So that's how I process things, by
Yes.
writing.
Yeah.
And
I feel you.
yeah, so I did a lot of writing, let me tell you. And I did a lot of reading. Um and basically I came across things that said you kind of have to trick your brain at first and find something positive, just even if it's the smallest thing. And so every day it was a challenge at first, writing down one positive thing. And when you're in this like really, sometimes it's a negative mindset that is caused by like really horrible things in life. And you've had really like actual awful things happen to you. But I hadn't. I was just being a little negative Nancy, and I had to get through some things and that weren't super horrible, and people have been through worse. But I made myself write down something positive about my day every day. Sometimes I missed a day. But as I went, it was actually easier. And I also started going back into, because I was also a people pleaser,
Mhm.
and I was very desperate to be liked.
Yes. Okay.
And so I left behind things that I loved because they weren't cool enough.
Wow.
And so I went back to those things that I loved, no
Yes.
matter what somebody cared about. And so over time, doing just those few things, um, it really helped my outlook, to be honest.
I love your answer. This may be one of the best answers because, first of all, I didn't know that there was ever a non-joyful Megan,
Oh, yes.
and
Mhm.
I've only known you as your joyful self. And I had a period where I started keeping a gratitude journal as well, separate from my other journal, which
Mhm.
is what you're talking about. The purpose of which was because neuroscientists have shown if you sit down and like you said, you're training your brain, you write down something each
Mhm.
day that you're grateful for, it changes your mood over time.
Yeah.
You become a more positive person just by that practice. I know there are going to be some people, my old self would be like, self-help, gratitude journal, like,
Yes. It sounds really cliche
but
sometimes,
it
but, like,
works.
honestly, it works.
Like, it makes
Yep.
you, I think, a better version of yourself over time
Mhm.
and just more pleasant to be around and to be around yourself.
Yeah.
It's more
Well, and I
pleasant to
think
be
that was
around
the biggest
yourself.
thing for me was I didn't like myself.
Yeah.
So, you'll have to learn to like yourself, and if you don't like yourself, then you need to figure out
Yep.
what it is you don't like and change it.
Amen.
Because that's all
Amen.
you can do.
Yes. There was a Eckhart Tolle quote that stuck with me years ago when I first read his book, The Power of Now. This is when I was starting to crawl out of my old ideology, my old self. And he had this quote about, I'm trying to remember. It was basically, if you're unhappy with a situation, you can either leave it or change it or accept it.
Mhm.
One of those three things. But anything else is like madness. You either get out of that situation or you change it, do something to change it. Or if you can't change it, you just accept it. Quit complaining about it.
Yeah.
Just thoroughly accept it. One of those three things. And that really helped me a lot. It was, I think if anybody's listening who has trouble with joy or, try a gratitude journal.
Mhm.
Try doing one of those three things when you're in a situation you don't like.
And
And
sometimes you kinda need to change the people that you spend time with. Not that you should, like, completely dump people or
mhm.
drop them, but you need to make sure that, like, are you, like, commiserating too much with certain people, and that's all
Yes.
you do is just commiserate negativity, and just limit that.
Yeah.
I'm not saying, like, just dump people. That's not nice, but
I know what you mean. Who do you surround yourself with? Yeah, that kind of thing. Because that's another quote I heard is like you are the average of the 5 people you spend the most time with,
Mhm.
like your mood and all of that.
That's
So,
super true.
yeah.
It's so funny because you think as a human that you're so very unique and different. And I mean, you are, but you don't understand how affected you are by the people around you and by your circumstances and by your environment.
Yes.
Because we think, oh, that's not going to affect me. Ugh, I'm in control. I'm in charge. This doesn't. No, it does. It totally affects you.
And somewhat radically. Can I give you an example of
Mm.
ideology in the environment? This friend of ours who was living in California at the beginning of the COVID lockdowns, the
Mm.
government response to COVID, and we talked to this friend, and this person was saying things that were pretty alarming, like, "Oh, I believe in the lockdowns, and I think we should bring in men with guns to enforce them, and the government needs to be in the streets. Like, we need, you know, we need military out there enforcing it." We were like, "What?" We were stunned because that
Uh,
person, but that person was living in a different culture at the time. They were in California where things were very different than how we were experiencing them here in Texas, I guess.
mhm.
But the big change came when that person moved to Texas, and within a few months was, like, maskless on a party boat, like, living it up. Like, we were like, "What?" So different during the lockdown's still happening, but
Yeah,
just
yeah.
being in a different ecosystem with different
Mhm,
fish
mhm.
and absorbing that, like you're saying, that can happen. That's an extreme example, but that was amazing to witness. It's like, "Wow, how much does my environment affect me?" And I'm
Yeah,
like, without
yeah.
realizing it, and being aware of who you like you said, who and what you surround yourself with, I think is so important. Megan, I think you're so incredibly wise for your age. I think you're a joy to talk to, and thank you for your time today.
Thank
Thank
you.
I
Honestly, you made a little dream come true today because when I first found you, like, a couple years, yeah, 2 years ago, I was like, "Oh, I love this lady. I wanna meet her. I wanna be on her show."
Really?
Yes, so it happened.
That's cool.
It's
Thank you for telling me
crazy.
that.
It's really weird because it happened.
Aw. Well, I'm super sad you're gonna be leaving us here in Texas, but I hope we get to hang out at least one more
Yes.
time before you take off. And, down below, we have links to your channel, but just tell people, anybody who's listening and not online, tell them where they can find you.
So you can find me on Twitter. I'm on it as Megan Leigh. You can find me on YouTube, obviously, as a Noob Reviews. I don't have a lot of new stuff right now. I'm just gaming because I'm moving and my brain is not
Yeah.
in a place to make videos. So if you want to catch me on a live stream and you have some good hints, you are welcome. Just no spoilers.
Great. Well, thank you so much for coming by, and, we will talk hopefully, not just hang out. I'm gonna say it here. I hope I get to have you on one more time.
Yeah.
Maybe even after you've moved. We'll bring
Yeah.
you come back on Pop Culture one night, our Wednesday night show, and and you and me and Mystery Chris, and we'll talk about whatever topic is interesting you at the moment. How about
Yes.
that?
I would totally do that. For real.
Cool. Okay. Well, thank you so much. Thank you guys for listening. Bye.
Thank you. Bye bye.